Hello and welcome to Teach Better. This is Technique Tuesdays, and today I wanted to talk to you about bow hold a bit. Those of you who are friends with me on Facebook on my personal page, and here too, those of you who have been visiting, you see that I've been away for a week. I've been camping with my family. We had a great trip in California, and of course when we go and travel and we camp, I don't bring my violin with me. And I've been making this choice to do these kind of vacations for a long time. I can afford it because I am not pressed for performing right now. And I think it's just good for my body and for my brain and for my soul to take a break. Sometimes I bring, and of course it's really bad for the instruments to be in the campsite when possibly it's too warm. So I don't want to do this for the instruments. Sometimes I bring my kids' instruments because they're cheap and inexpensive, and it's just really fun to, by the fireplace at night, just play some folk tunes or, spontaneously get into Bach chaconne on a quarter-size violin, which is always hilarious. And I do that, and it's really fun for the kids. And yes, separate topic, just how to have fun with the instrument while you're not working with it. So anyways, I've been away, and of course I'm coming back. I've missed the violin every day because even when I don't practice a lot, I practice every day. I play every day. I have contact with my instrument and I crave it every day. So yeah, that topic of, you come back and what feels stiff, what feels weak, and what's not working. And for me, so something that comes to mind is bow hold today. For a very long time, I feel like I didn't have the kind of feeling in the bow that was my own. And so when I come back now, I have a mental image, I have a physical image of and a feeling in my body of how my bow is going to feel like in my hand. And I put that bow on the string and it feels just right? So I may feel slightly not strong in my pinky maybe, right? Especially up here. But I feel like, okay, I'm back home. I came back. But that feeling didn't come for me until very late. For me, and this is just me being vulnerable because for a lot of you, maybe this didn't take this long, but for me, this took into my 20s. And I want to share this with you because I feel like it's an important lesson that I learned from it. When I was exploring my bow hold for, my teens and in my early 20s, I was, I think, fixated so much on how my bow hold should look like. And so I would see somebody's bow hold and it would look differently, and I would explore with my teachers how they look like and with my friends, and then I'd check my hand and I'd look at it and I'd see it here and then, right, so not only, obviously I was going for loose and for fluidity, but how that bow, that hand is actually shaped on the hand, I was very, very fixated on that. And a breaking point for me, so yeah, but I should back up, but quite often it just was almost, I feel like, on a daily basis. I never quite knew if I was going to pick up my bow that day and feel really good with that bow, or just slightly awkward and not all the way be able to pull that bow the way I wanted to, or to play that spiccato in just the most comfortable way. And it's kind of very stressful. And of course, really inconvenient if you have a lot of performances. You go on stage, you want to feel like you know what your body is and your playing body is. And then I was studying at Northwestern University. I attended a master class by a cellist, Lynn Harrell, a wonderful cellist. Which I, by the way, recommend. I am a big fan of observing in master classes and visiting master classes, even if I'm not the one playing. And of course now in my life I don't do this, but I've learned so much over the years just watching the process of learning, of teaching, of absorbing. And what I also want to recommend is to see master classes of different instruments. You can no longer see master classes of Lynn Harrell. He's no longer with us, but there's so many other incredible musicians that we can learn from, and not just string players. So I highly recommend this. I think students are really busy in college, and we overlook those opportunities too often. So that's just a reminder to do it, because for me, that day, that master class was life-changing for me as a violinist. And This is what happened. Lynn Harrell said, she's talking about tone and about color, and those of you who know his music, there's a lot of tone and a lot of color, and it varies, and it's really soulful. So there's a lot of complexity to it. And then he was talking about how it feels like in his hand and his bow arm as a cellist. And what he said is that with every note, with every color, with every sound he produces, his feeling in his hand changes. And that word change just kind of hit me because it was exactly what I needed to hear. I think I was fixated on shaping my hand so much and making it look and function a certain way that I forgot that it needs to function in many different ways. I mean, when we think about it, when we get through the bow, every, not even inch, every fraction of an inch of the bow as we move, all the angles, the weights, and where we feel the bow in our fingers completely changes. So when we go and play, one long bow on the violin, to a listener is something very stagnant and unchanging that's happening. But in our bodies, as we draw that full bow, hundreds of different changes are happening within those few seconds as we go through the bow, because different muscles are being used. But also that sensation in this last attachment, right? Like that, those fingers meeting the bow. That was the day when I understood. I thought, okay, my bow hold is shaped correctly. I look back now, I have images, I have films, I have pictures of myself. Of course, it was shaped differently. What I was going for was something very stagnant. And once I heard this, I realized, wait, there's more in my pinky. Wait, I finally heard and felt in my body what I heard from my teachers for so many years. When you pull the bow, you're going to feel it in these two middle fingers. All of a sudden, I felt it here, and then I sometimes felt more of that pronation on this index finger. And as I was pronating on my index finger, my pinky was also slightly rotating. As that was rotating, so was my thumb, right? And then when I got to the tip, this is so obvious, but even at the tip, because there's so much more power we need to put into this weak part of the bow, there's so much power, but the fingers actually need to open up as if to loosen up, right? So, and not grip to produce this. So this was in a much more sophisticated way that I'm showing you right now. I was already doing masters, I was playing complex big pieces, but those little things that we do in our playing, those little tensions, those little holding things that we do, sometimes really affect how we feel. And so when I come back to my instrument now, that is the main thing that I think about. It's like, okay, so where am I feeling here? Like, where am I leaning? Where am I releasing? So there's a lot of flexibility, a lot of change, and not just flexibility because I'm moving, but flexibility in the sensation of where the power, the weight is transferred through my arm, through my wrist, and into my fingers, and how that affects the tone, right? It's a lot more complex than just saying, here's my bow hold, and off I go. So I'm just reminded of this as I come back to my violin again, and just wanted to share that reminder with you. And also how that affects my teaching of young children. I think the same is true with children. You know, you open these method books, and the good ones, and most of them, have images at the front of the book of how a bow hold should look like, right? So these kind of images, right? And these kind of images, and these kind of images. And it's all very, very visual. Right? And of course we go on YouTube, and there's a lot of YouTube videos made on how a bow hold should really be and how to set up your bow hold. And it begins with, well, the thumb goes here, and this goes here, and this goes here, and this goes here, right? There's some teachers that also use a lot of stuff that they put on their bow, especially for very, very young children, to just kind of secure that hand in a shape, right? So it's visual and it's very stagnant. I want to challenge that a little bit, because we get very attracted by these curvy fingers that we know that students should have. But let's remember that a curved finger, can also be non-functional for violin playing. The way that that happens is you can absolutely curve thumb, and young students do it. When I switch a student from holding the bow below here, I don't do this with all students, but I do this with younger students. And then when I switch them, right, at first that thumb wants to do something like that, right? Obviously we don't want that. That will be tight and that will flip through. And so, and if you ask them, curve that finger, they will, right? But that actually is a very tight feeling. And once I have that tight feeling, that tightness is transferred into my tight thumb is always tight wrist. It's impossible to separate them. So what I want to just impress today is that curvy fingers, first of all, relaxed fingers are curved fingers, right? And we want them to be relaxed and curved so that when we pull tone, we don't kill the vibration of the string, we don't kill the overtones, and so that the tone can project and vibrate correctly. And also so that we can accomplish a lot of strokes that require, you know, these joints to bend, which is almost anything that we play, almost everything that we play. So getting attracted to this curvature, right? I mean, obviously this also sounds good. And I'm not saying fingers shouldn't be curved, but to the degree that they will be curved varies on hand and how we are shaped and how we look, how long our fingers are, things like that. And yes, it is very complicated. And yes, it is a lot easier to put all this stuff for kids all over the bow and they're kind of locked into something like this. I'm doing this and I'm feeling so much tension here. I'm feeling so much tension. I've tried some of those things that you can buy, you know, some of those cute animals put on top of the bow. I don't think it just works very well. The hand needs to be released, and there's no better way to do it than to do a lot of this. I do a lot with young students, this. And yes, I think that visual attraction that we have too, to how things look like, is, I think we're trying to help parents sometimes too, to take it home and help these young students. But this isn't difficult. We don't, right? And we don't need to do this. We don't need to do pinky on top. We don't need to do anything. Just this and that sensation. And I like the fact that the arm feels so much bigger than this because I don't have to squeeze and I don't have to kind of feel anxious about that feeling here. So yes, it's a lot of doing these jellyfish and jumping fingers and a lot of moving around up and down, and there's a ton of exercises and games that you can play with it. But just a reminder today for you that the way that it looks can be a starting point. For me, it's not a starting point. For me, the functionality of this final attachment of my arm to the bow is the starting point. And I think about how I'm going to be attached and how I'm going to feel here, or I watch out for that with my students, because my first goal is the sound that's coming up and there's coming out of the instrument. And there's a very big difference in the sound that comes out of fingers that are not completely locked or fingers that are curved but locked and tight. I think we all know about that. So that's my little reminder: flexibility and having that and the tone as the first approach, not how things look like. So hopefully that's a good reminder for you. Drop me a note if you have some comments about that. And I'm always loving hearing your feedback and your own experiences with how you teach things. So I always appreciate those. Thanks for listening and have an awesome day. Bye.